right, good evening and welcome to the January 20th, 2021 Grants Pass City Council meeting. We have a big day today across the nation. We have a new president and we have the first female vice president of the United States ever. Pretty exciting. I missed it all. I was working, but but it is a historic day and we have a lot going on both here locally and across the nation and around the world. So please join me for a moment of silence as we clear our minds and get ready to attend to our business here in front of us tonight. Please join me for the flag salute. All right, and we have a full house tonight with all councilors in attendance. Looks like we have several members of the audience here to speak with us as well later tonight, but our first order of business is to continue our quasi-judicial hearing for the minor site plan review for the Rogue Retreat Temporary Shelter. And tonight we've received some follow-up written testimony over the course of the last 2 weeks since we held our open public testimony with our public comment 2 weeks ago. We're not accepting public oral comment tonight. It's time for deliberation. So, council, let's hear what you have to say. DJ?
Yeah, sure. As we talked on the January 6th meeting, I had asked if they would be opposed to heightened security in the area because there's some security concerns by our constituents, and I would like to make that an additional condition on this temporary use permit to hire a concierge service or some contracted security service to monitor the area.
Okay. Yeah, Rick? Oh, I'm sorry, Rob.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know that I walk that area almost every night, and I already see concierge going up and down Manzanita Avenue. They seem to be there really frequently, and I'm sure if that was part of their contracted route, I feel that that's really a minimum requirement for me as well. I would need that as well. There was another thing that I was going to add. When Heather Hassett was here last time, I asked if the residents are, upon application, are photographed, and she said no. So I would also want to see photographs on all the applications for a couple of reasons. One, if a surrounding neighbor's security camera were to catch some person in an act of whatever, we'd want to know that they could be identified more easily. Also, it's a way of eliminating from consideration anybody that might be a resident. If we have a clear picture of someone who did something bad in that neighborhood, we'd want to know that they weren't in that facility as well. So I want to see pictures on the applications as well. And I'd like them to work with Chief Hensman to decide what type of picture, size, how much of the body, all that kind of thing they would need for easy identification.
Valerie, then Rick?
Okay, I would just like to start by clarifying that this is a temporary shelter. It is not really necessarily a warming shelter, and I just want to go a little bit back in the history of that, because a lot of the concerns that I have seen voiced actually are concerns that go to the use of that property for UCAN, which was a day only facility. And that was a facility that gave services, and people could walk in and get those services. And then those people hung around, and there was camping at night and hanging around the next morning for those services. That is not what is being proposed here. And I think that's important because we have gone on this journey, and I will say this, for 3 years ago I was on the committee and I actually went to Seventh-day Adventist Church. We almost put a warming center up there, shelter up there, and then the parishioners said, no, you know, we already do enough up here. We'd like to see somebody else in the community do something. And you know, I said, you're right, because they ran the Dorcas Center, and so that center's been up there in that part of town for all this time. So that was big. So that didn't pan out. So the next year we had the warming shelter, and that same group volunteered, lots of people volunteered their time to have the warming shelter on E Street, which is also in the northeast part of town. And that session, that didn't really work very well. And the reason it didn't work very well is during the day, it was a problem for local businesses. Where did those people go during the day? It didn't work. And Rogue Retreat knows how to run a shelter. We in Grants Pass have not successfully been able to do so. They have tried it out and they have made it work. So they are at this point asking for the temporary use of that building, which is a building that has showers, it has facilities for the people to eat, it has a kitchen, it has laundry, it has all of the things where those people can be safe. They have caseworkers that will help those people who want the help. And we have heard a huge call in our community for those services. We all know that we make mistakes in our lives and we need a second chance. And this is our opportunity to help provide that in Grants Pass. So it's a need in our community. I understand the problems that I heard, the people and the fears that they have at the northeast part of town, having lived through UCAN, but we need to give it a shot here with a group of people who have run something. They have agreed not to have the people come on that property and just be let in. They will vet them somewhere else, and they will give them the services, the professional services, and that's one thing I saw over and over again in the people who wrote in opposition. This is a professional office space. Well, to me, professional offices includes getting people their lives back. That is a professional services that need to be provided. So on that basis, I am going to promote the 3-month temporary shelter at that site. And I honor and welcome those people who live up there to help us find another site and something somewhere else in town, because this is just one piece of a problem that we have in our community. And I will say, the Northeast people are the ones who are bearing the brunt of it. So I would like to see further services in our city and have other places willing to come along on this journey to take the weight off the northeast part of town.
Rick?
I also agree with the suggestion that DJ makes about concierge service. And also a second part of that would be, the first part, which I'm hearing from you, is a 24-hour car patrol. The second part, I didn't know if we'd want to also consider during the opening hours, like 7 to 9 in the morning, if they have an on-site patrol, and 4 to 6 p.m. in the afternoon have an on-site patrol. This would also provide additional protection to the businesses and the school. That's an idea I'm just throwing out there if we would want to make that as a condition. Other ideas in here, I've made a list of what we could include as conditions if we want them. Suggestion would be install solid fencing enclosure for the smoking area. So the people that are there are smokers, they'll usually stand around in groups, and that would give them some privacy. And then in approving the temporary use, to state that it's a use to exceed from 90 days from date of occupancy. And so it's very definite that it is temporary. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Rob?
I think, Rick, I think your intent on the 7 to 9 and 4 to 6 or whatever, that sounds about right, but we would want to check the hours at that school if that's your main motivation, just to make sure that 4 to 6 cuts it. I don't know if they get out at 3:30 or 3, I'm not sure. So we just might want to check those hours.
Rick?
Might be able to just to word it that 2 hours from the opening and 2 hours for closing, and that could be determined later rather than setting a specific time in the conditions.
Are you suggesting 2 hours prior to the school opening, or?
I think I don't know, if the school opens at 8, then do you have somebody there from 6 or 7 to 9? I don't know. I'm looking for input.
Okay, Rob?
Yeah, that's kind of what I had in my mind when you were talking, is an hour either side of the opening and closing. If the school were to open at 9, maybe 8 to 10. If the school were to close at 4, then maybe 3 to 5, something along those lines. Something like that, yeah.
I'd also ask to clarify, what is on-site patrol? What's your vision for that?
That there would actually be somebody they have a uniform, standing there in uniform, walking around the perimeter and just checking the immediate businesses and the school. Because if you're just driving by once every 15 minutes or every half hour in the car, I felt during those hours that would be insufficient, and there actually should be somebody on site that could be walking around and just confirming everything is compatible with the neighborhood and that the businesses are safe and the school is safe.
Okay, thank you. And DJ, I didn't catch, did you say 24-hour security, or did you have certain hours in mind?
I just wanted to have that general concern about heightened security measures, and then just going with what council had suggested. I'm not an expert in this field, so I don't know what would be appropriate.
Okay. Rob?
Maybe we can ask Chief Hensman what his opinion is. I'm leaning towards a 24-hour, patrol where they go by every some periodic time. But do you have an opinion, Chief?
I think if you want to be as cautious as possible, 24-hour makes sense. But since you're asking for my professional opinion, I don't think that's necessary, based upon what I know from Rogue Retreat and the operation over there, plus some of the conversations I've had with Rogue Retreat, and the suggestion of concierge was something I provided when I did the walkthrough with Joe Hyatt, the fire marshal, a couple of months ago. And I'm not even sure you need to have a specific time frame in the morning because of the way they cycle people to and fro. My understanding is that they won't have anybody there first thing in the morning, so it may not be practical to have a security person standing out there like at 7 to 9. That may not be the best use of that person's time. Maybe if the applicant did share when people would typically come and go, we could identify when would be the right time to have people there, but maybe even a scattered presence, so people don't kind of can set their watch on what the security folks are actually doing. And I'd be more than happy to work with Rogue Retreat and concierge and come up with a plan. I don't think we can identify it here right now on the dais, but I don't think we need a 24-hour.
Yeah, Rob, and then DJ?
Okay, I appreciate that, Chief. Thank you. I think one of the issues that Rick was trying to get at, though, was on the one hand, yes, we want to have somebody there when the residents are coming and going, but we also would feel better if there was somebody there when the school children are coming and going and the teachers are coming and going, for their peace of mind. So that also is a piece of that, if I read you right, Rick. Is that correct?
DJ?
Yeah, so thank you for that input, Chief. I'm comfortable just handing it over to you and your discretion of what you feel would be appropriate. You're the expert here. Thank you.
All right, well, you have some options tonight, council, so you can approve the request as submitted. You can approve the request with the conditions stated in the staff report, which your staff is recommending that you approve the request for the minor site plan review with conditions of approval being that they apply for a change of use occupancy permit through the fire marshal, comply with all building department requirements, and comply with all fire marshal requirements. You can also approve the request with amended conditions. We've heard here tonight some consideration for additional security on the property and request for photos on the applications when persons are applying to be residents at the shelter, and also solid fencing for an enclosed smoking area on the property. You also have the opportunity to deny the request based on your review of the criteria, or you can postpone the request to a date and time, a certain date and time. Entertain a motion for what you'd like to do. Yes, Valerie?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minor site plan review for the Rogue Retreat Temporary Shelter located at 125 Manzanita Avenue with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Is there a second? Vanessa, second? All right. Further deliberations?
I just want to clarify the motion on the table. Is the motion on the table not including any heightened security or
At this
concerns about?
point, no. I personally believe that the heightened security will come because that's what Rogue Retreat does. That's what they do in Medford. I believe in our public safety and their relationship and that they will make that work. So I would just like to see first if it goes as is, and if not, then we can come back and make another motion.
Understood, thank you.
Brian, did you have a question, comment? No, Rob?
Yeah, I'd like to say that, based on, I'll wait to hear what everyone else has to say, but I would vote against that probably as it stands without our additional conditions.
Okay.
I feel that heightened security is important. I think the photographs are important. And Heather did mention they don't normally do that now. And I feel it's important as a tool for law enforcement later if there's a problem. So I would vote against Valerie's proposal.
Rick?
I'm still in favor of the concierge service and working with the chief on that, also with solid fencing. And I want to be very explicit on the 90 days, that this is a temporary use for 90 days only. So I'm not comfortable with the current motion that's being proposed.
Yes, it is. The motion is for a temporary, which is 90 days. That's what they applied for.
I felt some additional, I wanted to see in there 90 days from date of occupancy with the compliance with the stated conditions, because I feel the wording in the staff report could be ambiguous. Because it's important if this is to be regarded as a temporary use, then I just wanted to make sure that the use sunsetted at the end of the 90 days, that it was not an automatic renewal or any implication for that. It was just for 90 days.
That is what they're applying for. So that's, I guess I don't get your point, because it is a 90-day, that is what they're applying for. So if we vote it in, then it's 90 days. It can't be automatically renewed as a temporary shelter. Am I correct? Yes.
Okay?
Vanessa?
I just wanted to point out to your concern, Councilor Riker, that there is an expiration date in the application.
Okay. Thank you.
Joel?
I would really support the photo requirement, and it's not that expensive. We did that at our office. A lot of businesses do that as a matter of good business, and it always also allows the staff to recognize the face and the name. And so I know we did that with every patient that we had. And the software is readily available. It isn't expensive, and I don't, it seems like a reasonable requirement.
Further comment? All right, we have a motion on the table to approve the request with the conditions recommended in the staff report. All in favor?
Yes,
I guess I could call you out by name this
Yes.
time.
Yes,
Brian?
yes,
No.
Joel?
No.
Rob?
No,
TJ?
No?
Vanessa,
Yes.
Valerie,
Yes.
and Rick.
No.
All right, motion fails 5-2. Any other? Rick?
I'd like to make a new motion.
Yes?
A motion to approve item 1A, the minor site plan for the Rogue Retreat Temporary Shelter. Include comply with all building requirements. 3 are also comply with fire marshal requirements, but not limited to fire watch. Also employ the concierge home business watch and work with the chief on the procedures involved for that. Install solid fencing enclosure for the smoking area. They've already stated, but just reconfirming that all applications will be conducted off-site, including interviews, processing, and related activity. Include that the borders have photographs. Again, work with the chief on that to see what would be the best way to do that. And just confirming this is a 90-day temporary permit. And that would be my motion.
Do we have a second? Rob? All right, further discussion on this? Brian?
So I'm mostly in favor of the motion. The only slight technical issue I have is specifying that they have to use one specific security company to comply. So I would prefer it to be open to whoever.
I would agree to that.
All right.
Rob? Do we need a? Okay.
Rob, second? Okay. DJ?
Yeah, so I'm in favor of all things said, except for I'm a little concerned about some costs, right? Concierge service can be expensive, or security services can be expensive. Furthermore, the solid fencing required around the smoking section, whereas I think is a clever idea. I'm just concerned about Rogue Retreat's financial capability here, and and what they're doing, and adding costs to their program.
Okay.
Rick?
I got a quote for concierge. For security patrol service daily, it's $112.50. What gets really expensive if you have somebody on site, which I did not specify. On-site services, and I'm not sure exactly how to read all this, but it could be like $1,000. So that would be the expensive side of it. The other thing is they do charge, if it's a response to a call, because somebody's called in and said there's a problem and they respond to that, there's a $35 per occurrence. But if it's just the patrol and the per occurrence, the cost is very minimal.
Further clarification, you said $100 and some odd dollars. How often?
The $112.50,
Is that per day or a week or a month?
that's per day. So,
Yeesh.
Rob?
Yeah, I actually feel that as an overall percentage of the cost that Rogue Retreat is likely to incur here, I feel $100 a day is a very small cost to help protect our community. If there's roughly 40 people, residents there, it's $2.50 per resident, and I feel that that's well worth it. We've had a number of people, I don't really want to have the people in the Northeast bear the brunt, as Valerie said, of this issue. I don't really want there to be much of a brunt, and that's my hope. And I feel $250 a day per resident is a reasonable price to pay.
Vanessa?
I have in my notes from the previous public hearing on the 6th of January that there is a fenced courtyard in the back of the property at the Manzanita Avenue location, so I'm not certain if additional fencing is necessary.
that would be fine if there's fencing that works for that purpose. I'm not saying we need something in addition, no.
Further discussion? Rob?
If I remember correctly, there is chain link fencing there, but it's not necessarily, there's no privacy aspect of that, and as you can see right through it. So they may just have to modify what's there, which would be far, far less expensive. And I agree with I hear and actually agree with DJ's concern, especially for a temporary use, to make them put up a solid fence does seem potentially a little excessive. But there is a chain link fence there, if I'm not mistaken, so to just modify that to create some privacy, I don't think would be very, very costly. If there's anybody here that could correct me on that, that's fine, but I'm pretty sure there's a chain link fence there.
Chief?
You're correct, Councilor Pell. There's a chain link fence in the back. If I recall correctly, I think the fire marshal may have given the suggestion for a specific lock to make it applicable to escape purposes, but there is something back there.
All right, further discussion? All right, moved and seconded by Rick and Rob. We've got a motion on the table to approve the application with the conditions listed in the staff report, as well as additional security, a drive-by business watch, some solid fencing or a screen for a smoking area, photos on the applications, and just confirmation that this is a 90-day temporary permit. One more thing,
I hope. Just no clarification about how we're going to determine what level of security is required. Are we going to rely on the discretion of
He said
Chief
in
Hensman?
cooperation with the chief.
Okay, good. I just wanted to elaborate on that. Okay, thank you.
Are we comfortable with this, Mark?
Yeah, I have a bit of lack of comfort for that. I would strongly prefer that it would be an objective measure that the council decides right now. I think it puts a lot of discretion on staff's hands moving forward. I think Aaron and I are both a little uncomfortable with it and would strongly prefer that council comes up with either X number of hours per day or between certain hours, something much more certain than just deferring it to staff at a later time.
All right, Rick, do you have a suggestion for what you'd like to see regarding security?
Yes. The price I got for $112.50 said daily, so I would like to maintain that. And then the other price that was in there, if they had a need, is $35 per occurrence. And it was interesting, I read this book, Small Town, Big Problem on Homeless, and they said once they changed the formula in the way they were conducting their business, their problems went down substantially, where they maybe only had 1 or 2 or 3 calls a month. So I don't think the $35 would be, and it may not even have to be used, because they basically implied that they took care of that situation themselves. But I think for the protection of the businesses and the school that's there, we do need some level of security, and it does not need to be concierge. It can be any security service that they wanted to employ.
Do you know how frequently they intended to drive by? Was it 24 hours?
No, I don't have that information.
Okay, would anybody like to make a recommendation for the frequency of the patrols? Brian?
This isn't so much recommendation as maybe just a statement, but aren't all the residents supposed to be in by a certain time at night? I forget what that time is, 6 p.m., 8 p.m., whatever that time is. It seems like going much past that time might just be a waste of resources, so I just wanted to put that out there for consideration.
That was true in Medford, and so maybe you could say something like, you want security to drive by at least, 2 or 4 or whatever times an hour during those hours that the shelter is open and that residents can move about, something like that. Rob?
I think that's a really good thought, Brian. There's one other thing I'd like to consider, though. I know people in the neighborhood are concerned what happens when, somebody comes in late. And so I would think that we would want security there at least 1 or 2 hours after closing, because while it only may happen once or twice a month, but that was a big concern, I think, of people in that neighborhood. When somebody doesn't get in, or they're causing a problem in some way, we want to be able to be on top of that. So I would say something along the lines of 3 or 4 times an hour. I'm less concerned with the cost to Rogue Retreat on that security than I am for providing good security for that neighborhood. So I would say 3 or 4 times an hour. If that can be done for the $112 a month, I'm fine with that. If not, then I would say that Rogue Retreat needs to pay more. But is there a possibility, Mark, of, let's say we decide that that the security is going to be at 3 times an hour or whatever. We get a month into it and we find out we need it a little bit more. Is there a way we can go back or write this in a way that we can go back to Rogue Retreat and say, you got to up your security, that's the way it is?
I would say that's possible, but it would probably necessarily fall back onto what I was hoping to avoid, which would be public safety department discretion. And so you could write it in terms of, okay, security between these hours. However, the city shall retain the ability to mandate increased security if the need arises. So it's possible.
Yes, Rob?
So I prefer writing it up in some form or fashion, taking what Mark said into consideration, because I don't want to be 2 weeks or a month into this and wishing that we could provide more security and then it falls on public safety. So I'd like to have, in some form or fashion, a little bit open-ended our ability to add more security if it's needed.
Brian?
The flip side of that is, what if we are mandating that we have them drive by 3 or 4 times an hour, and the price that Rick is giving is maybe 1 time per hour, so the cost for that is maybe 3 or 4 times as high. We don't know what that number is. We don't know the details of that number or how much it would cost to do what you're asking. So that makes this more difficult.
Perhaps rather than focusing on the cost, you could focus on what level of comfort you would have with the frequency of the security. Yes, Brian?
I would be comfortable with, Rick called and got a quote. I would assume that the quote they provided is for regular patrol, whatever that means to them. So I know that might not be as specific as what Mark says, but again, it's as specific as the company already does. So something like that could work.
Valerie?
I just have a clarification, because I know, Rob, you mentioned $112 a month, and it was my understanding it was $112 a day. So I want to know how did that cost run?
It's $112.50. It says daily, times varying, and that's a security vehicle patrol service. It's not on the ground.
So basically what I'm saying is, I'm hearing they're saying that they're driving through on a daily basis, but the cost is $112 a month? I don't know. I mean, I
No,
guess I'm...
I
No,
believe
that
Rob,
was
I
per
believe
day.
Rob misspoke. He just said the wrong word.
Oh, okay, all right, I wasn't sure. All right.
All right, well, I would, I don't know if we're offered any clarity here. As far as the motion on the table, I would appreciate it if somebody would suggest a time and frequency that you would like the security to come by so that we could vote on this. Brian?
I would suggest that security service do regular patrol between the hours of 6 a.m. and midnight.
And
6 o'clock and what time?
6 a.m. to midnight?
So excluding midnight to 6 a.m.
It was your motion, Rick?
That would be fine with me. Rob, we need a second on that.
Are you seconding, Rob?
I got a
Okay, question.
So I might be agreeable with that, but I also, I still like the idea of being able to go back to Rogue Retreat if we find that it's necessary. I don't think that we will. After visiting their operation in Medford, I was extremely impressed. I don't think that we're going to have a problem, but I want to make sure. So I would actually like to invoke some kind of language that Mark was mentioning, that if it proves to be needed, that they have to come up with more. But that's up to council to decide. I'm going to, one of those 2 ways, I would probably vote to approve it. Regular patrols is good. But if there's a need for more, I would also like to put that out there.
All right, do we have a second on that amendment? The amendment was regular patrol, 6 a.m. to midnight? Second from Rob. All right, so moved and seconded, and we're now, motion is to approve the amendment with the conditions recommended by staff, as well as requiring additional drive-by security, a regular patrol between 6 a.m. and midnight, solid fencing for a smoking area, photos on the applications, and a specification that this is a 90-day temporary permit. Any comments or questions before we vote? Yes, Rob?
So do we need to say solid fencing? Do we need to say modifying the existing fencing?
I'm
Because there
sorry,
is solid.
I should have also said a screen. I believe we
Thank you.
kind of
Some
agreed
kind of privacy screen.
that it could be a privacy screen. Privacy screen. Okay, Brian, oh, Vanessa, comment? Brian? We ready to vote? Do you have a comment or question, Vanessa?
Now, just for clarification, is that request for the privacy screen, is that on the existing courtyard fencing, or is that a request for the interior property line? I'd like clarification on that.
It was just a designated area, not the entire property.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go this way this time. Rick?
You're asking for the vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes,
And Brian?
Yes?
Motion passes 7. All right. So I'm looking at my agenda here, and I actually have on the agenda a resolution for the ballot measure, but I believe we had already agreed to delay that, so just
It
move
says-
on. Oh, okay. Thank you. They're trying to trick me. I'm new here. I see it now, thank you. All right, we've got an appointment for the Parks Committee. And we have 1 vacancy on the Parks Committee. We have 4 applicants. And our committee recommendation is John Blackett. So on this issue, we have council procedures that indicate that the council will indicate on their ballot in front of them their preference and sign the list. And then you're going to turn these ballots into me. I am to read the name of the applicant receiving the most votes and the name of each counselor that has so voted, and then we'll open the call for nominations. Yes, Brian?
So just to be clear, we will be letting the public know how each counselor is voting.
We will be, and there is a resolution on this subject that tells me what to do. So
Great.
I am attempting to follow that.
So if we wanted to say something about somebody else who, other than that, who the committee recommended, do we wait until after we vote, or how does that work? I'm just kind of curious.
It does not indicate at what time we should, oh, it says that we have the opportunity to make comments. So go ahead and we'll open the floor to comments about any of the applicants.
Right now?
Yes,
Okay.
please, sorry.
I just wanted to, because I did read through all of them, and this is a very difficult choice for anybody, and I can understand, I know John Blackett has been on the parks, and so he knows a lot about the parks, and that's a really positive thing, but I wanted to put a word in for, it's been my experience on the Parks Committee, there's always people that are very involved in sporting events, and we've got pickleball players, and, the tennis people, and biking people, and one of the things that I was touched about Shannon Holst is that she is a mother with small children. And she has a love of nature and green space and all the things that I think are truly valued in our parks that are not necessarily seen through the eyes of an athlete or that sort of person. And I was truly, before I, saw the recommendation, and I certainly understand the recommendation, but in my heart, in reading through those, I think that's a piece that's missing on our parks, is just a person who wants to enjoy and have children, small children at parks. So I wanted to mention that before we voted.
Thank you. Further comment? Brian?
I would just like to say a word in favor of John Blackett. I was on Parks Committee before being on council, and back in, I believe it was October or November, we had another opening, and we had several applicants. And in our review of those applicants, we recommended, I believe it was Michael Sellers first, who is now on the committee, and then we felt just as strongly about John Blackett, and we knew that my opening was coming up, and so the committee recommended that going forward for this opening that he would be recommended, and so I'm inclined to follow their recommendation.
Further comment? All right, if you would please indicate your preferred applicant and sign your sheet and pass it back this way. I'll read the All right, we have, this is a strange process to me, sorry. We have 5 votes for John Blackett, DJ, Rob, Rick, trying to trick me, Brian, and Joel. And we have 2 votes for Shannon Holst coming from Valerie and Vanessa. So I will now accept it says I shall open for nominations, so I'll open for nominations. Brian?
I move that we appoint John Blackett to Parks Committee.
Moved by Brian, seconded by DJ. Any further discussion? Rob?
So I'd just like to say, since I don't know any of the applicants, I'm very comfortable following the recommendation that the committee made themselves. They presumably did their interviews and know these people better than I do, so that's why I chose John Blackett.
Thank you. Further comment? All right, Brian?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
And Rick?
Yes.
All right, John Blackett is appointed to the Parks Advisory Committee. All right. Next up, it's time for public comment, and we have several speakers who have turned in forms to speak tonight. First up, Grant Whip. Yes. Oh, you know what? I'm supposed to read something. Sorry, Grant. Hang on just a second. This is an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on items not related to a public hearing or council action item for the council. The intent is to provide information that is pertinent to the city's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the council as one body, not to individuals. Council may consider items brought up during this time later in our agenda during matters from mayor, council, and staff. This meeting will proceed in an effective and courteous manner. Citizens and council members will be allowed to state their opinions in an atmosphere free from slander, threats, or other personal attacks. Signs or placards, outbursts of applause, campaigning for public office, or other disruptive behavior will not be tolerated. If you have a question regarding any government-provided service or a current city matter, please contact the city manager's office in an attempt to resolve the matter. All right, Grant, please come back up.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Grant Whip. I'm a resident of Grants Pass, live over here on 9th Street. And I'd like to address my comments about the Grants Pass Skate Park. My wife and I are grandparents of a very active, almost 13-year-old boy who's also a very accomplished skateboarder. We've been supporting and mentoring and coaching him for 7 years now, and like I said, he's very accomplished. But in those 7 years, we've watched the usership, I guess we should call it, of the Grants Pass Skate Park go from just a handful of kids each day. And by kids, I mean everybody from the young youth and the 5 to 6-year-old on scooters all the way up to 55-plus-year-olds that have been in skateboarding all their lives. So from a handful of people a day to currently, when I drop Jovan off after school, the park is packed. It's at capacity or beyond. And we know that the park has had and is experiencing deferred maintenance. And I understand that there is funding available for that now. And I addressed the Parks Committee last week via phone, and I've had an appointment scheduled with Ms. Giordano so I can have a face-to-face with her sometime early next month. And so I represent a small group of parents, grandparents, and adult skaters that would like to make our efforts towards community outreach fundraising to assist in the maintenance and improvements. And we have short-term, long-term, mid-term goals. And I just would like to make my introduction to you. Hopefully we'll become good friends as the process moves forward and we can make Grants Pass Skate Park a good park again, and maybe expand it a little bit so it can handle the added influx of kids riding it. And I include myself. I'm almost 70 years old, and I did some calculations the other day. I've been in skateboarding almost 60 years myself. And so, yeah, it's kind of important to me, but more because the youth that are coming up and the influx of people using that park. So I look forward to seeing you all again, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Yes, Rick? Oh, I guess so. Rick had a quick question for you.
So when is a good time to go by and see the majority of the activity there so we get the flavor of what's happening?
Almost any time after school from 2:30 to dark, and there's kids riding that park well after dark until they come along and get run out. Which another thing we're looking at is lights. We'd really like to have lights there. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to have Rika, then Mark.
Rika Brown, 1415 Southwest Bridge Street, Grants Pass. Honorable Mayor, Council, and Manager. At the December 14th workshop, you discussed what kind of trees should be planted on the Washington Boulevard median after the declining flowering cherries are taken out. The Trees Advisory Committee was split on the matter. Some wanted to continue the row of red maples, but more members wanted diversity, so the group recommended white swamp oak. A couple of councilors who live on that street objected to the committee's choice of oaks. Oaks drop acorns. Squirrels love them. Squirrels are destructive, and they already have a squirrel problem. Diversity is overrated in street trees. Continuing that nice line of red maples would lend consistency to the median and make a beautiful show in the fall, even if they will be smaller than the current trees for some time to come. Red maples grow faster than oaks, particularly when young, and should catch up to the other red maples as the older trees mature. I love red maple leaves. I raked up a truckload last fall from around one large lone tree in that median for mulch. Red maple leaves resist rot as well as oak, keeping soil covered through the summer. The leaves I gathered were still in perfect condition, not sticking together as I spread them in my garden yesterday, although they were wet in the bags for 2 months. Their leaves don't blow around like oak leaves do, being flat. Oaks should not be planted near pavements. Round acorns are a hazard to cyclists, turn ankles, and make a mess in the road when run over. Crows drop acorns and walnuts on pavement just to get them run over so they can eat nut meat. Swamp oaks drop their leaves in the spring, and their dead leaves hang on all winter. City crews would have to clean up leaves along that median in fall and spring. Indeed, oaks are some of the dirtiest trees we have, dropping not only leaves and nuts, but flowers, many twigs, and lichen. Maples have smaller seeds that don't store well for squirrels and don't roll underfoot. They're surface rooters that will not likely get into the pipes they are planted near, and don't bother grass growing beneath them. Before we planted the present red maples, we had all flowering cherries on that median. It would have been better to replace all of them at the same time, but it will be good to continue with what already works. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Mark Collier and Chris on deck.
Hi, Mayor, Council. In 100 years, I could not top that speech, so I won't even try. Rick, to answer your question in the book, it wasn't a question, but it was a statement, that you said when you read the book that you saw there was a decline from 98%. The transition was from the warming center model to the homeless shelter model. So basically what Rick painted was a picture of you that took what we had last year at the warming center to what we hope to get at the homeless shelter, and you should see that same reduction from 98 down to 2. So that's what you had. What I came to talk today was about the town center. I just found it fantastic what I read, and I've reread this speech as many times as well. So basically, I have a used car that I'd like to sell you. Okay, that used car requires a lot of maintenance, but before I do the maintenance on it, my name is Travis, I want to see if you guys want to buy it. I want to see if you're one who's, as P.T. Barnum said, one is born every day. I already owe you $3-point-something million, so how about if you just give me, or I don't like, why don't you take the town center from me and I'll take River Road Reserve. It's just fantastically coincidental that that thing was dumped in your lap the day before strategic planning, and it says, okay, you got that and looked so attractive, it said, give me your dots. Well, each dot cost $1, and so this one's gonna cost you $3 million. So it reminds me of the same sequence of events that brought us about the makeover of Dollar Mountain into $1 Million Mountain. When Tyler gushed as president of your council and said in concert with your city manager that due to exceptional fiscal policies, we find ourselves with a surplus of $1 million, and you can have Dollar Mountain. Only to reverse themselves less than 30 days later, stated we don't have the money. That guy's now gone, that financial advisor. And then that's also led to the forced sale of River Road Reserve. You don't find the irony of the timing for this? That thing had to have been cooked for months. Boersma wants to sell something and you get it the day before strategic planning. Oh, how cool is this? There's your sticker with no dollar value attached. I find it absolutely fantastically coincidental. So I'm gonna leave it at that, and I hope you don't touch this thing, because if Boersma thinks it's worth $3 million, then go sell it somewhere to someone else besides you, because I don't want that thing. I think it's a piece of garbage. That whole building is garbage. I'll say it right now. Okay, with 30 seconds left, Tent City, And Blake versus the City of Grants Pass, a lawsuit which you walked into and lost, and you lost at attorney's fees. The attorney's fees were awarded to the homeless. It's the last line of the sentence of that finding. So the homeless sued you and got their attorney's fees for it. You're taking down their tents, their 3-season tents, and you're about to enter their 4th season. They don't do well. Those tents don't do well in the snow. They're breaking. If you have any questions, I'll answer them. I've been down there a lot.
Thank you. Chris Drake. Tina will be next.
Thank you, Council, for seeing me tonight. I am here tonight to encourage you guys to let that 94 ordinance of adult entertainment be dropped completely. It was just because of one person, and he's an idiot no matter what. He is now gone, and I think you guys, the city is losing money because they're not letting bars open downtown or other stuff. I understand, I do read the paper, and some of you do agree that it needs to go. And there are some that agree that it needs to stay. But in my opinion, and being a citizen of Grants Pass, it needs to go, honestly. And it's the ordinance of bars opening downtown within 1,000 feet of parks, 200 feet of schools. And if it stays, I think something needs to be drastically changed with this town. Because right now there is one bar that is breaking that ordinance. And there needs to be something done about it. And if anybody has any questions, I'm willing to answer them.
Thank you. Tina Hughes? I don't see a Tina. Okay, Stephen Nelson?
I'm Stephen Nelson, Hubbard Lane. I'll just read my letter. I'm here this evening to apologize for some of the wording of a December 16 letter. I spoke of Gestapo-like tactics by the city regarding the taxation of the Redwood Country Church. The wording could be misconstrued. In no way was I saying that the city government has been brutally abusive towards members of the church. However, I did learn that the city can fine the church anytime a vehicle is parked on the taxed area of the property, even though some of that is designated for parking. This is a tactic of brutality towards the church. Recently, I spoke with the county assessor and learned more regarding the taxation, although there absolutely needs to be more clarification. Also, am I wrong for wanting to understand the extent of the involvement by the city? One thing is certain, the taxation of a church is in violation of the Constitution of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our last item for public comment. We have any emails to review tonight?
So there were 4 emails regarding the adult use ordinance, one regarding the BOC weekly business section, one regarding Stephen Sable, connecting with cannabis, Historic Buildings and Sites Commission, Trump and County Commissioners, letter to the editor, and public bathrooms downtown Grants Pass.
Thank you. Yeah, for tonight, we'll hold on to our public comment until later in the meeting. We are just, so everybody knows, kind of in the process of making an adjustment about when we'll review public comment, but for the sake of tonight, we'll leave it the old way. Next up on the agenda is our consent agenda. These are items of such routine nature or without controversy that they may be approved in a single action. And DJ, do you read the? All right, our council president's going to read the consent agenda.
Okay, we have item A, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Control Systems Northwest for on-call support of water and wastewater funds. Item B, motion approving the minutes of the city council meeting January 6, 2021. Item C, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Urban Area Planning Commission meeting of November 17, 2020. Item D, motion acknowledging the minutes of the Tourism Advisory Committee meeting of December 1, 2020. And with that, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion, second by Rick. All in favor of approving the consent agenda? I think I have to call by name on this one.
Yep.
Mark, is that a call by name on the consent? Thank you. Brian?
Yes.
Rick? Sorry, Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
DJ?
Yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Thank you. They move around every meeting, and Rick was sitting over there. I want him to be over there, I guess. All right. We are going to adjourn this city council meeting and convene the Urban Renewal Agency meeting. Is there I have to take a motion to do that? Motion to adjourn to the URA, Valerie?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the regular meeting and go to the Urban Area Renewal Committee meeting.
Move second? Valerie? Vanessa? Sorry. Gee. All right.
I get it.
We have a presentation?
Do we need to vote or?
Just need to vote?
Well, I don't-
Adam's coming up to talk to us.
Good evening, council, or should I say board of directors for the Urban Renewal Agency. So what I have for you tonight is the annual report for the Urban Renewal Agency. And just to give you a little bit more information, I've got a single slide to give you an update on the audited financial reports. There was a request earlier today. So for the City of Grants Pass, we do have the audited CAFR, which is the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. What usually comes with that is the communications with those charged with governance. We do not have that yet because part of that conversation is related to the single audit. A single audit is when you spend more than $750,000 of federal funds. We spent $731,000 alone in our emergency business grant earlier in the spring. That was CDBG funds. We definitely went over the threshold there. And this single audit report was delayed because they only just released the federal guidance on allowable expenditures for the CARES Act funding. So we have part of it, but not all of it related to the city. That'll be coming forward in the near future. But what we do have is for the Urban Renewal Agency, we have the audited financial report, which should be on the dais there with you. Inside of that report is the communication with the board of directors for the Urban Renewal Agency. And that particular letter is not for public distribution. If you look at the very last paragraph of that letter, it states that it should only be used for management purposes. And of course, tonight we have the annual report, and I'm going to go through a summary of that. The requirements for the annual report is that we must provide it to the board of directors by January 31st after the fiscal year. That would be this month. To give you a summary of the tax increment financing revenues, the purposes and amounts of past expenditures, the budgeted expenditures, and the impact on all taxing districts. So looking at that tax increment financing revenues, I copied and pasted this directly out of the annual report starting on page 3 of that report, or page 448 of the packet. This is table 1 showing that in FY20 we received $899,000 of property taxes and $14,000 of interest. The purposes and amounts of past expenditures in FY20, we spent only $8,991 on community development. Community development is essentially the department within the Urban Renewal Agency, just like we have police and fire, all of that within the city. Community development is the Urban Renewal Agency's department. And actually, let me go back. That $8,991 was for to pay for the audit and also just a little bit of staff time in preparing all of these reports and working on those. For the fiscal year 21 budget, this top section is the requirements or the expenditures, and the bottom is the resources. So that budget is currently $12,500 for contractual and professional services. Again, that covers audit services and also consulting fees. Direct charges would be for some of that staff time whenever staff is working on Urban Renewal Agency specific items. That $30,000 is definitely just a budget number. It's going to fluctuate from year to year and will probably increase as we have more money to put forward towards city projects. And then capital outlays budgeted at $2.2 million. We'll go into a little more detail about that in a second. And then that contingency of $30,000. For the revenues, I wanted to mention that we've budgeted $1.2 million of URA tax revenue this year. So far, we've already received $982,000 of that. However, we have also gone through the portion of the year where we receive most of the property taxes. We'll probably see a little more trickle in throughout the year. Also, I don't think this number has all of January yet, but it's the most updated number I've got at the moment. So we're not far off, and we still have the rest of the year to get some more. As I said, going into a little more detail about that $2.2 million, these are the list of projects that have URA dollars allocated toward them. And we'll actually come back to this slide in a second. But this is the breakdown of all those projects. The other capital outlay that you see there at the bottom, the $1.3 million, is if a project were to come up, we have budgeted to allocate those resources towards a project. We just haven't selected the specific project yet. So they're available to spend. And finally, the impact on taxing districts. All of these districts you see here are essentially foregoing some property tax revenue while the Urban Renewal Agency is intact. The school districts that you see there with the little graduation cap, they're not actually impacted in that their portion is funded by the school state fund. So it's not having a detrimental impact on the school districts. What this does is it pulls all of the resources of all of these taxing districts together. So for the city, while we are foregoing $368,000 of property tax revenue at the moment, we are gaining access to an additional $430,000 to collectively build that tax base for the future, as well as getting access to some state funds, which we're getting for the school districts. To give you a little more history about the entire life of the Urban Renewal Agency, the contributions to date are, as you can see right there, and then the bottom section is the balances to date. So like that first project, URA analysis, we contributed URA dollars towards that project. We spent every last cent of that, and that project is now closed. So there's still $255,000 left for the Spalding Industrial Park development, $180 for Makerspace, and then at the moment, $500,000 is still sitting in the Downtown Welcome Center project, but in FY21, we've actually budgeted to remove those funds from that project. So that takes us back to this list. That negative $500,000 that you see at the top is for that Downtown Welcome Center. I will also say that at the moment, we have not made any of these transfers yet. We can, but these projects, the timing of these projects has not forced us to make these contributions from the URA to the city yet. But as budgeted, they will happen by the end of the year. The call to action is tonight, or at least by the end of January, and I've got a potential motion for you.
Questions for Adam? DJ?
On that last slide, you had a category of other capital outlay, and could you briefly describe what that is?
Yeah, that other capital outlay, essentially, the Urban Renewal Agency has been building up a balance over the last 3 years, and instead of saving that as contingency or ending balance, if you, as council or the board of directors, decided to use those funds, we would have to do a technical budget transfer or a budget amendment to say, no, this isn't contingency, we want this to be capital outlay. So just to kind of skip that step, we budget that as other capital outlay, and then throughout the year, council's already budgeted to spend it, and you can pick a specific project and go forward from there.
Understood, thank you.
Rob?
So, Adam, this might be a terminology thing, but I'm just not sure if I understand. So roughly, right now, basically we'll call it the bank balance of the URA is going up roughly $900,000 or $1 million a year right now? Is that about accurate or no?
Fiscal 20 had a particularly low amount of expenditures with that 8,999. One thing that's coming forward is the debt service for the wastewater and water treatment plant. I anticipate that being a little more of an annual contribution. So I would probably recommend looking at the incoming revenues as a gauge for how the Urban Renewal Agency is growing rather than the total fund balance, because that fund balance would just be, we haven't expended those dollars on a project yet. So those property taxes, as you can see in FY20, were $899, and we're anticipating those to go up over $1 million for FY20. So we're definitely seeing that growth there.
Okay, so that's, I guess, approximately what I was saying. So I'm not sure if I follow then. On page 4 in the URA annual report, impact on taxing districts, it says City of Grants Pass, 368,708. I don't understand where that figure comes from. If we're essentially gaining 900,000 a year, I just don't understand what that 368 means.
Yeah, so that 368 is the impact to the City of Grants Pass. If there was no Urban Renewal Agency, the City of Grants Pass would be getting that $368,000 of revenue. And thank you for asking that question. I had failed to mention another point I wanted to make was that because the Urban Renewal Agency is getting that $368,000 and contributing it towards capital projects, that also relieves the city from having to contribute $368,000 to those projects. But the benefit is that you also have an additional $430,000 of other taxing districts' funds to supplement that project as well. So you get really good bang for your buck. So that 368 is what the city is not getting directly through property taxes. It's instead going to the URA.
I understand that. What I don't understand is the difference between the 368 and the roughly 900,000.
Right, so the 900,000 is the property taxes that are being received from all of these taxing districts. So the 368 is the city's portion of that 900,000.
Okay, but all those things there don't add up to 900,000 on that table. That's my confusion, I guess.
Yeah, the tax impact calculation, there's going to be some year-end differences, but the tax impact...
It's close, thank you. I see it now.
It's very close.
Thank you.
And that comes from the county.
Yeah, I should have seen that, thank you.
Brian?
So forgive me, this is my first time going through this, but on this, you have a slide with the project list. I think it might just be the previous slide or maybe, yeah, that one. So those items, I'm assuming, are in our amended plan that was just amended. And I'm just curious, like, I don't know, for example, Riverside Park improvements, $400,000. There's allocations in here where, I guess my question is by approving this report, are we kind of like giving our blessing to the allocations for the upcoming year?
So at this point, I think you would just be receiving the annual report. This annual report is just a statement of fact of this is the current budget. it would be up to the board of directors to change course, but that'd be at your discretion.
I see. Okay, and then one other little question. You mentioned the debt service for the wastewater plant. Is there a date where that is beginning? Are we already paying that, or?
Yeah, that's something Jason and I have talked about in the last 6 months, is making sure that we start planning for that now. The water bonds, we haven't even gotten those yet, but we need to go ahead and start setting URA dollars aside to assist with those debt service payments. So I anticipate FY22 being the first year that we budget for that, and we'll be bringing some more information on that specifically forward here in the budget process.
Thank you.
Valerie?
Yeah, this is not my forte either, but I'm going from 2019-20, which we had a total receipt of $913,188, and then we jumped to 19-20-21, but we begin with $1.125 million. So I don't know, at the end of one year, and then suddenly you have more. I'm just wondering where that came from. Does that make sense? So, yeah, because you've got the annual 2019-20, that's where the money came in, and then you're jumping to year 2021, right? And so I guess I'm just kind of, because we had the expenditure of 89, yeah, so I'm just figuring that was the money we had, and then we spent very little of it, and I get that. And then we jump to the next year, right? And we start off beginning balance of 1.125, and I guess, I don't know. I guess I don't know what I'm asking, but I'm just kind of asking for a clarification.
Yeah, it's probably a little easier to analyze that question on the annual financial report that you have there, but essentially, the URA agency, the URA already had a beginning balance, and then it earned this $899,000 of revenue, which increased its balance.
Okay.
But then we only spent $8,900 of that. So that's why you see that pretty strong beginning balance for FY21, that $1.1 million.
Right, okay.
And then this page is just the budget for FY21.
Right,
this
right.
Is
and so I know it
not
hasn't
what's
been
happened
spent.
yet.
It's just,
So the URA did start off with so far a healthy beginning fund balance, and then we've budgeted to have $1.2 million of revenues and expend up to $2.3 million in FY21.
So is the contingency, is that the 6% that we like to keep in, is that what the contingency fund is? Is that just kind of like financial, or no?
That 6% is definitely for the city. I don't remember the specific conversation on why 30,255.
Okay. I was just wondering if it was a certain percentage that we tried to keep in a contingency if we did it the same way as you did at the other departments. No, okay.
I would say that having that contingency of 30,000 would definitely set some money aside to pay for the audit for the next year.
Right.
So it's just a little more specific, not quite as broad as the 6% that we use for the city.
Okay. Brian?
I had another question about the downtown welcome center line, and you mentioned that was to be removed, and I see that in the number there, but I don't know how that decision came to be. Was that a decision from council, or was that from staff, or do you have any clarification on that?
I think
yes, some of that was, and of course these numbers are associated with before strategic planning, the results from that. But the $500,000 was originally put in there because we were going to do some modifications to the Welcome Center and being able to utilize urban renewal dollars for some of that. We are putting some of that on hold right now, and so we thought we could allocate that resource somewhere else at the time.
Okay, so that was a staff decision?
No, it was a council decision.
Yeah. Yeah, we discussed it at a council level a number of months ago.
Great, thanks.
Further questions? All right, thank you, Adam.
We need a motion.
Comments, motion, Valerie?
I make a motion to acknowledge the receipt of the Grants Pass Urban Renewal Agency Annual Report for fiscal year 2020.
Mayor, it is a council action, so you need to open it up to the public.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, okay, thank you. We'll open it up to the public for comment. All right, hearing no comment from the public, I'll entertain a motion. Valerie?
I make a motion to approve that, oh, I just had it.
Mike, maybe?
To acknowledge the receipt of the Grants Pass Urban Renewal Agency Annual Report for fiscal year 2020.
Okay, moved by Valerie, second by Joel. All right, discussion? All right, let's vote. Brian?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes?
DJ?
Gosh, what a clever program, yes.
Vanessa?
Yes.
Valerie?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Thank you, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn the Urban Renewal Agency meeting and reconvene to the regular city council meeting.
I move that we adjourn the
You could just
Urban
say-
Renewal Agency meeting and reconvene the public meeting.
Thank you. Second? Rick, thank you. Welcome back to the Grants Pass City Council meeting. All right, I'm campy. We've had too many meetings in the past week. Next up, we've got matters from mayor, council, and staff. Review of public comment. Does anyone have a comment on the comments? DJ?
Yeah, I have a few. The gentleman that spoke about the skate park, I think that's something that's identified, some deferred maintenance or otherwise. I'm curious about that partnership that he was talking about. He's thinking about fundraising, local fundraising, and I'm just curious about how that works with, public infrastructure and fundraising in regards to fixing up parks, et cetera, because that seems like a great idea. If we have public interest for fundraising, yes, yeah.
Well, there's different ways you go about doing that. They can form a Friends of the Skate Park or do a nonprofit and actually be a big fundraiser and organization and funnel money through there to help support the city. I'm not sure at what level they were talking about getting involved. It could be that the city would like to form a task force, a skateboard task force that would help research funding and support and gather interest on what's next for the skate park type of thing. That has a potential additional funding mechanism with it also, just from a standpoint of being able to utilize that for additional grant funding or application too. So I'm not sure exactly what level that is for support, but those are a couple of options.
Sure, I think that's a great idea. I would actually encourage some facilitated communication with that gentleman and see at what level they're interested and try to chase after that partnership. I think that's great. Let's see, as far as Rika's comment on the oaks versus cherries, I agree. Have we officiated the direction of what trees are going into that planter strip? I recall we had a presentation from Tony and we talked about it.
Right, we did. There was a presentation, and I am not remembering at this very moment what the actual decision
So the action from it
was.
was that we were going to go do a survey of the residents?
Yes.
And then get that feedback back and then make sense of that. And it might not just be what one citizen wants, but looking at the sum of the community and what trees are there. And Rita's comments will be part of that public feedback on that survey.
Very good. Thank you for the refresher. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Counselor. And we have identified the properties and we have a survey drafted, so that should go out here next week.
Okay, very good. And just Rika, just so you know, your comments are duly noted. And then I also want to thank the other gentleman for coming and speaking about adult use. I agree with you. We need to eliminate that adult use ordinance. Thank you for coming.
Comment? Rob?
Yeah, with regards to Rika's comments about the trees, I happened to watch the council meeting. I wasn't on council yet when you guys had that, I think it was a workshop. And I know at that time DJ's concern was not so much the type of tree, but the fact that they were going to be off-center in that, down the parkway there in the middle. And I just have to, this isn't necessarily the right time, but I want us all to remember to ask the question, the current trees right now are down the center. Now, the urban forester guy said that they needed to be off-center, but the current trees are right down the center. So I walk that area all the time, and I just have to wonder, trees off to the side are going to look kind of silly. So I want to revisit that when the time is right. But the other thing I'd like to just remind council, I know I said it the other day at the strategic planning with regards to the skate park. And also, by the way, if I remember correctly, and I think I do, there was an original partnership with the skate park. There was private funding that was part of that original skate park. Valerie's shaking her head. She might remember. So, but I pretty much clearly remember that. But I also just like to remind everybody that skate parks are used more per square foot than any other type of park, and they cost less. They're used more per dollar spent than any other type of park across the country. And I'd love to see lights on the skate park also, if it seems reasonable that the kids will use it longer, because I think it's a great asset.
Further comment, public comment?
I'm just going to add on with the skate park. I agree that it is utilized and it's a great activity, and I would like the idea of moving towards lights as well. So, yeah, I think that's a great goal and something to look forward to working with, having other people involved and helping us put it together.
Thank you. I'm not aware of any committee motions to be considered tonight. Okay. Council liaison reports. Rick.
This afternoon, there was a solid waste meeting, and 2 items we discussed. The franchise agreements are about 45 pages long, and we had a refresh on those. We had a consultant that was attorney background go through and upgrade those agreements, which are going to be reviewed by the committee at a later date, since they're quite voluminous. And the second item we did was mention that the landfill costs have gone up, and we can anticipate that the agencies will coming in for a rate change in the future. And that would be that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other liaison reports, Brian?
Bikeways and Walkways had a meeting a couple weeks ago now, and I technically wasn't the liaison, but I was there, so I may as well report on it. They received a presentation from Dan Miller from National Park Service and Travel Southern Oregon regarding development of Dollar Mountain and ways to engage the community and stakeholders and council in getting on board with backing that project. That took up a good part of the meeting, and then there was also there was announced that the city received a Title II grant for the Crescent parking lot, which is planned for Dollar Mountain, and that amount was $80,000, so that was good news. And there was a few other little things. They talked about safe routes to school moving forward and working with the school district to implement that, and I'm sure Valerie could speak to that because I know that she knows a lot about that. And just a couple little odds and ends, but that's about it.
Thank you. Valerie?
There was no COPA Arts meeting this month, and the MRMPO is tomorrow, and they are next week going to kick off the Safe Routes to School. They're in the process of putting together a team to get that going, so that's exciting.
Thank you. DJ?
I don't have a liaison report, but I just wanted to say that Housing Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. in the council chambers, or you can do a remote by Teams. They're going to be continuing their presentation to educate the Housing Advisory Committee and anybody else interested in minimum density, it being one of their primary goals. I would encourage councilors to at least read their minutes or listen to their audio or even join that meeting because that's a very broad topic. There's a lot of information to absorb in regards. So I'll be there, and I welcome anybody else that would like to join.
Thank you. Joel?
Just briefly, the tree committee talked about getting those surveys out, and then also talked about putting some energy into the Heritage Tree Program, which those trees that are of significant history in Grants Pass, that we would have a special designation for that. And they're doing some coordination about the future, so make sure that we can avoid some conflicts with utilities or transportation plans and those kind of things. So it was a good meeting. They're becoming more active and more engaged, which is fun.
Thank you. Vanessa?
The Josephine County Emergency Management meeting was rescheduled to February. That was scheduled today, but that's rescheduled for next month. I have nothing to report on that at this time. And I know that we have moved past the committee motions. Is it fair for me to highlight one that's in the back of our booklet? Okay.
Sure, did I miss one?
Yeah, the Tourism Advisory Committee made a motion to recommend the council to bring parklets back immediately to help the downtown restaurants. I do know that this discussion has been had. I know that there's some issues surrounding stormwater, but I just would like to highlight that motion.
Thank you. I believe that was actually my motion when I was on the tourist committees. Excellent. All right, mayor and council comments. DJ.
So I just want everybody on council, particularly the new ones, to recognize the monthly report that came. I'd encourage everybody to read this document front to back. There's some fantastic information in this document. If you want to know what the city's up to, it's right here. I mean, there's really good stuff in here, like wastewater, for example, processed 2 billion gallons of water. I mean, that's just fantastic, right?
Riveting.
Yeah, I had a couple questions though. Kind of end of year, Chief, if you had any comments otherwise about how last year went in regards to years prior or otherwise, any highlights, anything that you wanted to add, given that this, you know, we've kind of finished a year of public safety?
Put me on the spot there for a minute. I have to think about that one.
Sure.
Yeah, we've had quite the year. It's when we went through strategic planning, I kind of ended with a 2020 highlight reel, and I'm sure I missed a whole lot of things that have happened throughout the organization. We've been incredibly busy. We have seen data decreased in the form of violent crime, but it doesn't feel that way in the field. We've responded to multiple major crime call-outs to include 2 homicides within the city of Grants Pass proper, and then supported the major crime call-outs on 8 homicides throughout the county. It's been a busy year. As I reflect on our conversation in strategic planning the other day, I actually kind of forgot about COVID, and then we had that to deal with. And our guys are still knee-deep in assisting not only our partners in the county, but just the community in general, so we can get folks vaccinated as they would like to, for those people that would like to, essentially, and working out that piece. Never ending. We've had a busy year, and we expect to have a busier year next year with the COVID hopefully dissipating and hopefully having some sort of herd immunity into the summer and the fall. I do expect to see somewhat business as usual as to the 2019 numbers. So as you can see from those numbers, if I'm figuring off the top of my head, I think we went down about 5,000 calls for service in a year. And then as a reminder, our 911 center and our just dispatch calls in general, we see about 35,000 calls for service from citizens in just Grants Pass proper. And then you throw in that proactive element that our men and women are consistently out there doing. You can add about another 30,000 calls to that. And that proactive work that we expect from our folks really helps keep the crime down, especially those unlawful entry into motor vehicles, the burglaries, and those property crimes that really have an impact on people. Obviously, the person crimes do too, but that was a long way to say we've had a busy year. Hopefully, that's what you're looking for.
Sure, that was. It was just more affording an opportunity to reflect on the year, and I appreciate that. I did have another question though about the motor vehicle crashes. I'm typically shocked by the high number of hit and runs in this community, and just wanted to bring that up. I mean, it's shocking to, like October there was 53, for example. That's a felony crime. And then I'm just curious about, is this something that you focus on trying to follow up on in particular, or?
Yeah, we do. Depending on the type of hit and run, it's misdemeanor crime. The majority of our misdemeanor crimes, when you do a hit and run on a person, that elevates it, of course. Unfortunately, we do see this type of thing quite often. Sometimes that effect might have, maybe sometimes people feel that if the jail is not lodging people on these type of crimes, they might be able to get away with it. But we do have a very active traffic team, and they do try to go after these cases and investigate them. But sometimes they're difficult. If you get a partial plate, it's next to impossible to track them down, and or good video footage. And then, of course, we have to prioritize what we do on a day-to-day basis. So unfortunately, that misdemeanor hit and run certainly wouldn't take a priority with a lot of the violent crime that we see in the area.
Thank you, Chief.
Valerie?
I just wanted to mention, I was pulling something up here, because I was looking, I thought that there was some sort of a events meeting. I noticed that Jill Ham put something out on Facebook today. I didn't know if it was tomorrow or next Thursday. They were doing some, pulling together merchants who were interested in doing events, because that got postponed last year. I don't know if you have heard anything. I need to look on that. But while I was looking for that, I did find that there's a housing rent burden community forum, January 26th, which is next Tuesday, correct? Is that here at City Hall, or is that going to be a virtual, or how is that?
That's going to actually be both, not unlike what we have done for some other committee meetings. So we will have the opportunity for folks to gather here, but as you know, we have the 25-person capacity.
Right.
We are planning to utilize the conference room that will provide for a little bit of overflow there, and then we have also published on the city's web calendar the MS Teams phone number and conference ID if somebody wants to call in. There is no video here through MS Teams, so those that joined via video will not be able to see what happened in the room, but we will have a PowerPoint, and there will be opportunity to see that regardless of which room you're in or if you want to join remote.
Okay, so that's great. I thought it would just be a good time to mention it, because it is next Tuesday. There's not another meeting before then. So, all right.
Valerie, the initial meeting of the Grants Pass Merchants Association will be Thursday, the 28th at 6 p.m. at the City Council chambers, and Jill Ham has asked people to let her know if they'd like to attend, as seating is limited.
Okay, thank you.
It's on their Facebook page. Yep.
Thank you.
Joel?
Well, I just wanted to spend a short amount of time just recognizing the efforts of the people up here on strategic planning. And I felt like our working relationships would model what the community would want us to be. And that is, as we have differences of opinion, we can freely express those with each other, and we can actually need those differences to make things even better. And I saw us taking a significant step forward last week to address those things that were meaningful to not just us, but to our constituents. And I appreciate, Rob, I hope I'm not embarrassing you, but by your willingness to participate in the way that you did with this COVID thing, which may or may not make biological sense, and we did good. So I think I think we need to continue to model what the community expects of us, and I think it'll benefit the community probably in ways we don't imagine.
Thank you. Further comments? Brian, and then Rob.
Yeah, I had a comment regarding the city's use of Microsoft Teams, and my comment and my sentiment has been exacerbated just in the past week. And what occurred was I was trying to go back and listen to the audio from the Parks Committee meeting, and it was so bad that it was almost unlistenable. There were people that you couldn't hear, and then they couldn't hear each other, and there were committee members that were just like talking to themselves, and they didn't know what was going on, and it was just kind of a mess. And I've seen incidents with Microsoft. I've had this concern before that meeting when we've had public meetings in the council chambers. As Brad just said, there's no video. It seems less robust than maybe a Zoom option. I've done a ton of Zoom meetings the last year, and in my experience, it has seemed smoother and easier and more robust. So I just want to kind of express that concern with the public meetings and the ease of access and the capability of the software for not for us, not for just us, but our constituents as well.
Rob?
Yeah, first I'd just like to just very briefly explain what Joel was speaking of. I was not able to attend the strategic planning in person. I was on a voluntary, self-imposed quarantine. I had a potential COVID exposure about a week and a half ago. I tested negative, felt fine the whole time, so I don't feel that I have any issue there, but that's what he was speaking of. And on short notice, Karen was able to set me up with being able to attend virtually, and I appreciate that. I just wanted to be clear, because I was unable to attend that, and it was interesting. It was interesting trying to figure out exactly what was going on, not being in the room. Just very quickly, I just wanted to go over what my priorities are, because I know there was a Courier report that talked about, a certain order. But coming out of that meeting, and certainly coming out of that meeting, my number one priority is the public safety levy. 1A, right behind it for me, would be implement a plan for a safer urban-rural interface to reduce wildfire threats. We've seen towns burn down, and it's obviously a horrible thought, so we really need to work on that. Implement the housing plan would be right behind that. Study staffing and overtime levels across the organization for potential excesses. I feel that's very important. Those would be very important. A notch down for me, although still important. Work collaboratively with the county to find a better location for the bus hub. Support continuity of special events, things like Boatnik, Back to the 50s, Chalk Art, make sure that we keep those going. Without COVID this year, they're going to be in demand, and we want to get them right. Get the Caveman Pool up and running again. And all of that way on top of, I'll put down at number 7, what the Courier had listed as number 1 for what the council came out with. I would say explore the urban renewal opportunities for the Caveman Plaza, with the emphasis on explore, not necessarily implement, but explore. So I just wanted to clarify what my priorities are. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. One quick comment. I attempted to send you all an email. I know we've had a number of questions about our email with people not seeing everything that's coming through. I was just trying to identify that there's a focused folder and an other folder, and then there's the junk folder. So most people are familiar with junk, but you may not be familiar with other. When I sent you the note, I noticed that it came into my other folder. So it may well have gone into your other folder and you don't know it's there. So if you look at your email and you don't see a note from me earlier this afternoon, hunt down your other folder and you'll find it. Staff comments?
I just have one item. We were rocking and rolling on Monday, and especially during the agenda setting topics, but we have on the dais the meeting from Monday. I just wanted you to be aware, cognizant of what, based on direction from Monday's workshop, or actually Tuesday's workshop, the depth of the January 25th workshop and special meeting. It's a doozy, but it was based on council direction at the meeting, so I just wanted to give you a heads up. I don't know if you want to look at making a couple changes. I did talk to Jason, and we could potentially move the Redwood Conveyance Crossing. We do have a consultant that's going to be there for that, but we could move them to lighten that load if you'd like, Mayor. And then the rest, I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It's a pretty big meeting.
I think that would be a good idea to move that. What do you say, council? Move the Redwood Conveyance Crossing? Shall we raise hands? Who is in support of moving Redwood Conveyance Crossing off the January 25th? I'm seeing Brian, Joel. I am seeing everybody, yes. Let me just quickly look over what else we have there.
Can I have clarification? I'm kind of confused because I didn't know exactly what you were talking about, and I wasn't at all of the meeting on Monday. So some things, obviously, we're having a special meeting, correct, on this coming Monday. So looking at this, where does the workshop end and the meeting begin?
That's a good question. And there was, all the start items are starred for workshop discussion, and then you've got a CC for appointment of Rogue Retreat, and then you've got a CA, which is water treatment plant, which was requested also. I don't know if you still want to have that there or not, but it is, both of those items are there.
I don't remember what action are we taking
What,
on the water
yeah,
treatment
Brian.
Given our discussion yesterday, I don't know that water treatment plant needs to stay on that Monday agenda. Just throwing that out there.
It's a council action. It-
But you were wanting fully, so we just put that there, and that's why I wanted to discuss this with you. So, and like Brian mentioned, it may not be appropriate now.
It was something that Brian had requested, and if Brian would like it removed, it was kind of a placeholder as an opportunity to have a discussion before February 1st.
Okay.
So I think it's, if Brian wants to rescind it, it's probably no longer necessary. Does everybody
Yeah,
agree?
Yeah.
Remove that from Monday.
Okay.
Is the Rogue Retreat, that's a,
In facts based on tonight's meeting.
okay, and so in the interest
to
of
be there?
efficiency, we're doing that during a workshop, okay.
Yeah, that was requested, like, I think 2 weeks ago by council, so we could just expedite and make
Okay.
it quick.
Expedite, okay.
Any other questions, Brian?
Yeah, just for further clarity, I see the public safety funding on there for Monday, and I just want to make sure that we're going to have materials to review for the weekend.
Yes, as we talked about, I'll be sending out the materials on Friday like I do with the city manager's report. So you'll be getting those type of materials every Friday before the Monday workshop.
Thank you.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks for pointing that out, Aaron. We did have a very long meeting this week, and it looks like we may yet have a very long one Monday, but we trimmed it down a bit. All right, with Jason?
I just have one quick item for you. Driving home across the bridge the other night, I noticed that part of the white lights were out on it's the Redwood sign. We did look into that. There is actually a broken tube, so we have called for somebody to come and look at that and see what the repair is. In case you get any calls from your constituents, though, tell them we are aware of it and we are working on it.
Okay.
Thank you. Chief?
And I just wanted to let council know that the 2021 Department of Public Safety Policy Manual is now live and online under important links on our main page. So we'll update probably every 6 months to a year, but it's on there for the community and for the council to see.
Thank you. Brad?
One community development item for you. On January 5th, our department received a letter from Mr. Marv Ransom, who's the owner of Oregon Pizza and Port Authority. He was requesting a sidewalk cafe permit for use of about 70 feet of the alley between G and H, between the OPA building. And this relates to COVID-19 and the ability to add outdoor seating during COVID-19. I was not comfortable using the sidewalk cafe permit for that process, so I did talk with Aaron and Jason about what maybe some alternatives we have. The city does have a street closure process. We do have a permit for special events, and we did create kind of a special permit for the parklets. So those are kind of all three things, mechanisms that the city has, none of which really are specific to, that really fit this well. So our thought, at least at the staff level, was we should probably just bring it to you. I did speak with Joe Hyatt, Fire Marshal, to try to get his read. That's a fairly busy alley between there, between 8th and 7th there on behind OPA. The request is for, about 70 feet. It would give them room for about 12 tables. So, the city has been trying hard to come up with some creative ways to assist businesses, especially restaurants during this COVID-19. So we're certainly trying to be sensitive to that. There's some concerns related to, the garbage pickup, for example, that happens back there. The use of the alley and whether, we likely would need to close it. The fire marshal was certainly not comfortable with a permanent closure. However, he said because of the city's parking lot, I forget which one that is, that's right adjacent on that alley. From a public fire access perspective, he was actually comfortable, with a short-term kind of closure. So because of the uniqueness of this, we did craft at staff level a permit that could be used just sort of temporarily during COVID-19 to assist businesses who might want to do something like that, with a couple of key caveats. One of those being to get the consent from all of those properties that are on the alley, because if the alley was closed, they would all be affected. So we felt that was important. Also, from a solid waste standpoint, making sure that there's some alternative to how solid waste is picked up during the time that might be closed. So I think we're bringing it to you to see what your thoughts are, and if you kind of have any support or other concerns you want to provide to staff to pursue this.
Thank you. Questions, Vanessa?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. Did you have anything to add, Jason?
I yield to Joel. Go ahead.
Joel?
Oh, so just to be clear, you want those comments, feedback right now? I just had one quick concern, and you probably already thought about it, was how do we be fair and equitable? Because it seems like it is it seems like it's a good idea as long as it can be done safely and for the public good. But if you have one alley and you got 10 businesses, how does that work? So that we're fair and equitable. And I don't know how, first come, first serve, or what, I don't know.
Aaron?
So really what we'd like to know is if you have some favor to this, we will draft something for your review and bring it to a workshop so you can provide direction to us on that. And that's all we're looking for. We didn't want to spend the time on really formulating something unless we got, you are interested in doing something special for this COVID temporary thing. And if so, we'll bring something forward to you.
Vanessa?
We talked about resiliency through our strategic planning process, and I'd like to revisit that terminology here with this discussion. That really is the ability to bounce back from something disastrous, and COVID-19 has been disastrous to a lot of communities, so I would encourage us to remain flexible and see what we can do to help our downtown move forward through this.
Rob?
Yeah, in spirit, I'm very, very much for this. Again, to echo what Vanessa just said, anything we can do to help it out. But also, when you develop this, whatever you're going to bring to council, obviously the one business will know kind of what you're proposing because they proposed it. I'd like you to, before you bring it to us, it'd be great to have some idea what the other businesses feel. That wouldn't necessarily be their final decision, but I'd like to have more than one business know that it's even coming to council, if you understand what I mean.
Valerie?
I was just going to say, so basically, let me get unclear, because I agree with this. It's not worth bringing it to the council if you know that the people around it are not going to agree, because I think that is an important part of it. So would you be bringing it to us after you got the people in saying, and the neighbors, because you said that was one of the caveats that you were going to do, is have that.
That would be part of the requirement in order for the approval. But we
Okay.
don't want, I mean, this is one, but there could be others that might want to use it also, like Councilor Pell, I think, was alluding to. And so I don't want to be specific on this. I don't want to get into a huge discussion on this.
Right. Okay.
I just wanted to know if this is something you'd be interested in having as a potential
As a
program.
general and not
Yep.
specifics.
I think I'm seeing a
And I'd say
dais full
this.
of nods here that we are in favor of looking for solutions to help our businesses during this time period. So, Oh, they're all raising. Hands up.
Hands up.
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. No, Adam. Come on.
So sorry, super quick. To give some more detailed answer to the question about why that list of the impacts doesn't add up to the same amount of revenue, that is based on a calculation of the tax rates and the assessed values. It does not take into account the 3% discount or the timing of delinquent payments. That's all.
Thank you. That was very quick. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Valerie.
I make a motion, we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Thank you. DJ second. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. 7:55. Good job, guys.